I've learned a lot that the content has to be effective and meaningful, and then you layer in the beautiful. And many times you can do them both.
There's this big debate among consumer brands, like in-house content versus agencies. How do you manage these operations?
It's an ever-changing model. We used to do everything in-house. We basically had an in-house agency. That's very hard to sustain because there's always turnover.
What is your take on the future of these influencer marketing?
For us, we don't use influencers very heavily right now because...
What's a hot take and an overrated metric in marketing?
I mean, impressions.
Would you still want to invest in organic content that are more like cultivating the brand presence?
So organic content is still very important, and that just requires a longer-term view.
What's your take on AI avatars, AI models, kind of like flooding the internet?
I still strongly believe in the value of the actual human being, and in part that's because
Lisa, I'm so happy to have you here. You are the CMO of Reverie. I would say sleep is having its moment now around the world because people are finally thinking it's very important. It's not nice to just skip sleep and party all night or work all night. So there's a lot I want to dig into. But first, what is it like being a CMO of a company like Reverie?
So thank you, Priya, for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation today. And being the CMO of Reverie is great. I love waking up every morning refreshed and coming to work and working on sleep. We are a small but mighty team. So every day I'm wearing a different hat, and every day I'm learning something new about a different part of our organization and how it feeds into what I do every day and how it impacts our customers.
Awesome. I guess like something that has changed over the years, I think since you came into Reverie, it's been over a decade, and what it means to be a brand and what kind of storytelling you need to adopt to connect to customers has significantly changed, starting from like, you also sell through retailers, but you also have a direct customer channel, but social has blown up and now there's like agentic and AI commerce. So I feel like CMO's role has expanded to like look at like so many different aspects of what the right storytelling methods are. Can you walk me through a little bit about like what's top of your mind, what's keeping you up at night?
Absolutely. So you're right. 15 years ago, I wasn't at Reverie, but 12 years ago when I started thinking about how we were going to reach our direct-to-consumer customer, we were starting off with a very traditional direct-to-consumer model. Very paper heavy, very phone heavy. We actually sent information kits out to leads in the mail. Our postage expenses were really high.
Wow.
And thinking back on that, it feels like a lot of time ago, eons ago. So now we're entirely digital and moving at a much faster pace. How we develop campaigns, how we execute them, and the time to market that we spend is much more rapid. We are much more into moving quickly, identifying opportunities and going after them versus planning and providing feedback and iterating and thinking that everything needs to be perfect and polished. So when I think about what keeps me up at night, it really is staying up to speed with every technology out there that will help us optimize and stay ahead of our competition.
Yeah, and digging into that a little bit deeper, you have a direct-to-consumer channel, but there's also retailers where the transaction will get completed.
Right.
And the sleep systems that Reverie sells, I would say like if it's like 2,000 plus like price point, they're highly customizable. So there's a good amount of time a consumer has to put their thought into figuring out like this is something that they want.
Right.
So what does the consumer journey look like, and how are the marketing efforts kind of structured today and the content efforts structured today to get the customer to make that purchase?
So it looks a little different on the two sides of our business. So our primary business is selling adjustable bases through retailers that sell furniture and mattresses. Then we have a smaller direct-to-consumer unit where we get to interact more directly with end consumers, and that's a great channel for learning and for really, really understanding what that journey is. So on the retail side, most customers come into a store because they're in pain or they've had a life event like they're moving, maybe they have had a change in relationship status, or they are in pain. And they will generally speak with a retail sales associate. They will share their budget and their needs, and then they generally try out a good, better, best. And the sales associate will say, okay, now that we've identified kind of what your budget is and what you need, I'll show you a few more options, and then you pick and you're out of there. On the direct-to-consumer side, we don't actually have many customers try before they buy.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we can build the value of the customizable and custom story to them. And that really comes from capturing customers in the moment who are searching for beds that will help relieve pain, or beds that will help their partner stop snoring, which is a big one and very relatable. Or they're in the market to move, looking for mattress sales. And with those customers, we try to get them hooked by talking about the customization story. And if you are somebody who has a snoring partner or a partner that has a very different preference than you do, that's where we are able to really hook.
Yeah.
So it generally is a very consultative sale, and it takes anywhere from a week to a month. But most people that we capture are considering and kind of ready to make a move. So we'll consult with them about what their needs are, and then help work through them to convince them that customization on each side of the mattress and customizable adjustable beds are going to give them what they need. But it is a process of helping them self-realize what their sleep and comfort needs actually are, because most of us don't think about that before jumping into the consideration process.
Yeah, and with all the changes that have happened, I think what a lot of brands these days focus on is it's not in-the-face selling. There's a lot of education, there's a lot of inspiration, building aspirational value towards that brand.
Yes.
And perhaps they kind of cultivate this brand recall for a specific kind of product. Right. And because the nature of consumer marketing has shifted over a decade that you've been here, what are some things that if you were given a blank check, you would just like to change overnight, but it's probably easier said than done?
Oh my goodness, I would love to have that blank check. I think one of the biggest things right now is if we are telling the customizable story, we need to reach the individual where they are. And that means more personalization of content and more education that really feels like it's in the moment and relevant for the consumer of the content. So, there is a lot more that we can do now than we could even a few months ago as far as personalization goes. But it really would be spending time to build out all of those different journeys for all of the different customers that really would benefit from our product and might need a little more time to get there.
And where would this sit? Is it on social? Is it on the website? Or is it other paid channels? What does that journey of customized content look like in your mind?
So I think a lot of it is on social or via digital ads. We do have a very visual product, and being able to show it with either renderings or videos or people explaining their journey is tremendously helpful. So I think it's all of the above, but being able to explain from somebody that's not a very high-ended brand voice is very helpful for us.
Yeah. And the latest trend has been to shift away from these editorial commercials to more of lo-fi videos shot by relatable people who look like you. They just post on TikTok and Instagram. And that's kind of taken the world by storm. So I'm curious, what is your take on the future of these influencer marketing? And also, is it sustainable? How sustainable is it for a brand to lean on them to shape your brand?
For us, we don't use influencers very heavily right now because we need people that are truly believers and users of the product. And with an expensive, large product, it's hard for us to send free samples.
Yeah.
And so the testimonials we have are all very heartfelt.
Yeah.
I've run into a few people over the past month who found out that I work at Reverie and get so excited about their product. And that is the dream. So when I can meet somebody like that and say, would you do a quick testimonial? It's the best. But whether or not they're doing a testimonial for me on screen, which will help our advertising efforts, or having that same conversation with a friend who mentions that they're looking for a new bed, it has equally valuable impact.
Yeah. I think that makes a ton of sense. I guess like when I talk to brands, they always have a love-hate relationship because after a point, it's very expensive to rely on our influencers if they have not cultivated a very good proof of happy customers, like being able to like translate that into brand love.
Yes.
So that makes a ton of sense.
And just one other point on that, depending on what the engagement is with an influencer, if it's only a few posts, it's not enough for a considered purchase. So we find unless the person is already talking a lot about health and sleep and it's part of their journey naturally, it's really challenged to get that buy-in from a viewer.
Yeah. And given how much social has become like the go-to for any information, and now with ChatGPT or like Perplexity, answer engines kind of like are at the top, what it means for a brand to be visible has completely changed.
Yeah.
So what are some things that are running through your mind about like what needs to change, maybe both from a leadership level and also at the nitty-gritty level of like an associate working on content to ensure that this brand shows up in all the right places? So every time somebody thinks of sleep, they think of Reverie, and by the time they're old enough to make the purchase, they probably will only look at Reverie.
Well, that would be the dream, wouldn't it? And I think I don't have all the answers for how to get there. But from a leadership standpoint, it's understanding that this is a fast-moving game and investing in your resources to take the time to understand how AI is evolving and how we can use it. Setting aside the time for learning and for experimentation, I think is critical to be successful and keep up. From an associate standpoint, it's understanding that the specificity of the content is going to drive the answer or the pickup per se when it comes to an AI search versus a traditional search. And also the specificity will tie back to the niche influencers or the niche conversations that are happening that can float to the top for the specific people that you're speaking to.
Yeah. And I'm curious, there's a lot of folks who watch this who are running D2C brands. They're just starting out. Some of them are like in the mid-range. They're figuring out what's the engine for growth. As a leader, what should your mindset be to ensure your team is set up for success in a world that's so fast moving, in a way where they have the right risk appetite, but at the same time, there's also like brand values and vision and targets that they need to meet. So how do you set up the right guardrails without like scaring people who are really junior to come up with the right ideas?
For sure, because you don't want to have a junior person feel like they've made a mistake.
Yeah.
That's irreconcilable. I think it's really important to have that high-level aspirational vision for your brand and to spend enough time simmering in that with the entire team so that everybody understands what the mission is, right? Our mission is to help people live better lives through the power of sleep. And we really do believe that. And I get so excited when I can talk about sleep. But ultimately, most of our customers in their consideration process are not really thinking about sleep. They're thinking about how they're going to find comfort. They're thinking about how they're going to find a tool to sleep on every night. And so figuring out how to bridge the gap between the true aspiration that gets us all excited and wanting to come to work and create content every day, and actually bringing it down to a tactical level where we are relating to the need at hand is is where I think leadership needs to be spending their time making sure that that gap is being bridged, and that the guidelines that they're setting for tone and for the content being created, especially if content is going to be created using AI, is very precise. One thing that we're spending a lot of time doing right now is ensuring that our prompts for everybody, we're encouraging everybody in the company to figure out how AI is going to optimize how they work every day. But doing so means that we have to be very, very clear about when and how we are prompting certain activities. Otherwise, you end up with a lot of variation that may not always be on point.
Yeah.
I think the flip side of that variation and experimentation is that sometimes you learn things that may be somewhat counter to the brand, but have value for your learning process. But I think ultimately, if you're trying to stay on point and reach your objectives and not waste time, being sure that everybody has a clear understanding of what the baseline prompting and the baseline expectations are, so that you're not backtracking or making mistakes.
Yeah. I'm curious, you mentioned there's a lot of people, like let's say 50 plus, who probably have understood the importance of sleep. They really have an idea of like what I want, and probably it's easy for them to like come here and say, oh, these are the 10 things I'm looking for. The consideration phase is like much smaller.
Yes.
I'm curious, like, are you taking efforts, if any, to like kind of expand the consumer market to like other age groups, especially now that it's like in vogue for like people to say, I'm going to prioritize sleep. Health is really important. And
Yes.
the share of the wallet is also increasing for a lot of younger millennials, especially the ones in tech. So I'm curious, like, are there any efforts to expand the consumer base, like rethink marketing for some of them, outreach for some of them through different channels?
Definitely. I think we are always looking for the opportunity to reach customers at a younger age, because the sooner you start sleeping better, the better off you're going to be when you get to that 55 plus phase of life. So we found a lot of value in engaging with potential customers using quizzes or assessments of sleep. And we're still working on optimizing that, but everybody wants to learn how they're rated on sleep. So we've gone through several different iterations of quizzes that we've developed with sleep experts to ensure that they're accurate. But we'll assess the quality of your sleep habits, your sleep environment, and then give you feedback on how you sleep versus others.
Yeah.
So that's a good starting point, because it engages with the customer on an important thing for our product. Where we're working on improving is how do you connect that feedback to product? And it takes time with a younger consumer, even though they recognize that they may be getting a C on their sleep, and they have a few things to improve upon. However, if we're able to engage with them and they continue to engage with us after that quiz, and we continue to give them personalized content that's valuable, then we start chipping away at that block. So when they're ready to purchase, we have some share of mind.
Yeah. Now that you say that, I probably take a lot of these quizzes just for like, it's a good ego boost, and then you send it to your friends.
Yes.
And there's also like all these like sleep facts. Oh, people who wake up after like 4 a.m. do this. I don't know, like sometimes when I see that, if it's like right or wrong, but it's like such great content that you just bookmark and like keep sending while you're scrolling. Like it's true scroll stopping content.
Yes.
So I would say like, yeah, that probably is like the best investment. I'm curious, what does the content portfolio today look like? So how do you prioritize that, and where do your efforts go, and where do you think that you're probably thinking about in terms of like expansion when it comes to content and storytelling formats?
I always want more stories, and my limitation is absolutely time and resource. Right now, a priority for us is developing assets for our retail partners.
Retail partners, okay.
And it's just assets that show the product in its full, that they can use on their website or in printed material. And over the past few years, we've shifted from doing a lot of product photography to a lot of product rendering. And what that does is it allows customers to zoom in on the texture of the fabric of the base, to do a 360 view so that they can see the underside and understand the mechanics, and also to view it in their room using AR. So that's been really exciting because it gives us more traction to help explain this category of product, adjustable bases, which is really still not familiar to every customer. It gives them a little more comfort by having those digital assets. On the D2C side, I need more content that makes those assets come to life and that explains how the base plus mattress creates benefits for you beyond the cool tech features.
Yeah. And what do you wish you did more of with the retailers, or like how do you exercise brand control here? Because when retailers are who close the transaction, they run paid ads for you sometimes, like they kind of control that narrative. How do you make sure Reverie, the brand, that the way you shaped it kind of shows up there?
So our best opportunity to get some share of voice on the retail floor is to make sure that our training team is providing a great experience for the retail sales associates that they're training. And I give a big shout out to our team for being really, really good at that. But it's making sure that when they need to explain something or when we launch a new product, that we have the visuals to help our RSAs want to show the product and want to sell the product. The other thing that we love is when sales associates actually sleep on our product, because then it becomes another testimonial. And that's really very powerful for us. So I think that would be that's the best way for us to get to the customer in a retail store, is by making sure that our training and our assets stand out above the competition.
And how do you view competitors, especially now that there's celebrity-led brands, or there's brands that come with a certain level of eyeballs that they have already acquired because the founder probably is like really famous, or there's like social commerce. There's so many channels that what excites you and scares you about this moment to compete with so many people?
What excites me is I think we have new tools in our toolkit that are going to let us be more effective at a granular level and to win in an iterative format versus in a mass format. Scaling is difficult, and what scares me is when I see a lot of funding going into a category, and as a private company we can't compete. That happened in the 2016, 2017 period when all of the beds in boxes were hitting market. And the CAC went up to crazy amounts. So at that point we had to scale back a little bit. But what we learned from that is that there's still a very target customer out there, and if you focus enough and you find them enough and you're specific enough, you can find success with growing in that niche.
And I guess like everything is about like cultivating that brand love. I'm curious to learn a little bit more about like what kind of changes have you brought into the workplace today as like to keep your team motivated, because the pace of change is crazy. So every day you think about putting something out, or like you find something that finally works, that trend is already passed. So it must be a very hard job to be a leader, especially because your team probably is grinding hard enough, and then they figure out, oh, maybe that is so yesterday and nobody wants to see that.
Right. We have to applaud learning, and we have to applaud that taking a risk pays off sometimes and not others. But in the process, you're still learning. And I know it's sort of a hackneyed saying to say, praise failure. But truly, if we're going to keep going, we have to be motivated by learning and by growth, and not always by success. And also, I think one thing to keep the team motivated is just making sure that I reinforce taking that time to explore, taking that time to have a conversation with a vendor to learn. Taking the time, we actually do a lot of experimentation with startups because it helps them get feedback from a brand. It helps us learn what's cutting edge.
Yeah. And what's a hot take and an overrated metric in marketing that you just cringe every time they say, oh, this is super important for us to optimize, but you think probably not worth digging into?
I mean, impressions. I think anything that's not really it's challenging because there are things that are somewhat intuitive. For us, we're all about cost of acquisition and cost per lead. So we still very much drive success on how many leads we're bringing in and what the quality of those leads is.
And I guess if that's the success metric, would you still want to invest in organic content that are more like cultivating the brand presence, might be much harder to measure? Or would you say like that is something you still see as secondary today?
So organic content is still very important, and that just requires a longer term view. We have posts that were created a long time ago answering questions that are really important to a customer in market, like what is a split king mattress? And those posts perform so well over time. It is the gift that keeps giving when you have that high performing organic search content.
And what's your take on AI avatars, AI models, kind of like flooding the internet? And it's very easy to like recreate any of them. Some of them definitely look very sloppy. But do you foresee that you really need humans to sell any of these products in the next 5 years? And where do you see kind of like the trends in marketing going in a couple of years?
I think there's going to be a big influx of, full avatar adoption and then some die out. I still strongly believe in the value of the actual human being. And in part, that's because you still need the humans to be creative and to develop the prompts that matter. I saw an article recently about an MIT study showing that, they did a huge survey with a group of people who were writing essays. 84% of them couldn't remember a sentence of what they wrote. And that's the danger, and that's where human intervention for the time being, while these models are perfected, we're a long way from having perfected models. And to your point, if they're easy to create, they're also easy to break. So I'm a big believer in adopting models to help optimize our performance. But right now for us, it's very much additive instead of a substitute.
I think that makes sense because we help a lot of brands accelerate creation, but I always tell them this is not a replacement for it. You still know your brand, and this is a way to like augment your workflows, but we cannot replace this person making those creative decisions for you.
Right.
Maybe taking a little bit of a tangent, are there like, maybe like before you became a CMO, you thought like, oh, this would be so cool, but after you became a CMO, you found out there are aspects of the job that's like not really sexy, glamorous, and you're like, I don't know why I have to do this. Are there moments like that that come top of your mind?
Yes. One moment, and it is also a learning, is I thought there was a lot of glamour and fun in the job, and there is. It's really fun to be able to understand the customer and speak to the customer through things that are exciting and engaging and hopefully differentiating. But really, one of the most important things that we do is the technical product writing that ends up in tear sheets for our retail partners or for the end consumer in a retail store. The promotional things that go in, we've done road shows and other things in unglamorous places like state fairs. And that's where the beautiful is never as powerful as the attractive, in the sense that like if I put like a red sale sign and you can see it from across an exhibition hall, it's going to perform better than a beautiful image with a gorgeously styled home. So that's where I've learned a lot, that it's really it's the content has to be effective and meaningful, and then you layer in the beautiful. And many times you can do them both, but I think spending the extra time to read the owner's manual again or to make sure that those specs are really on point is important.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that because there's a lot of tension you see between brand designers and performance marketers.
Yes.
Because what is beautiful is not necessarily the most performant.
Yes.
Especially, at least in social media, you can see the content that goes viral is not the most beautiful content. Sometimes it's cringy, sometimes it's shocking. And when you say that, it makes a ton of sense because human behavior hasn't changed. State Fair or Instagram story, you simply cannot put highly stylized stuff and then expect it to perform. So that makes a ton of sense. Something I want to dig deeper into is I didn't know marketing has to perform these functions of reading through technical specs and being on board with all that. Maybe because Reverie has this very interesting business model, so you kind of own it all. How do you manage your team and content portfolio to kind of measure success across these different verticals? And at what point, what are some code red situations where you realize something's not performing well and you have to make some difficult decisions?
So we are a very cross-functional team. And over the years, we've become more so. And I think that's really strengthened the quality of our output, both on the marketing side and also on the customer service side. So, the broad umbrella that I sit on top of is customer experience. And it truly is, if you aren't putting the right messages out in the world, you're not going to get the right feedback at the end. So it's that, okay, we've been able to get a great CAC, our customers, converting. And then we want to make sure that on the back end that the NPS and CSAT scores are high, both for the salespeople, if any, that they interacted with, and also with any service team members that they interact with. And that could be a conversation that happens right after purchase when they have questions about the product, or it could be 5 years down the line when they're having an issue with the bed, or when they're, it's usually 3 years when their remote batteries die and they're like, my bed's not working.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we're there to help along the way, because that post-purchase experience is very important for lifetime value, either direct lifetime value with a second purchase or accessory purchases, upgrades, or with word of mouth.
Yeah, that's interesting you put it this way, because usually in most consumer brands, marketing is on its own. Customer experience, customer support, there are two different functions.
Yeah.
But here you've kind of integrated it into one umbrella. So you really track the whole funnel from all the way from consideration to purchase to post-purchase experience. I guess I'm curious to know a little bit more about what are some of the efforts that I think you're really excited about, especially when it comes to social and agentic commerce. Is that top of your mind? Are you worried, anxious, excited? Maybe tell me a little bit more.
I am super excited about the agentic experience. I think it's really neat when you can meet a customer where they are and help them in the moment. It's one thing to have, we have a lot of customers that prefer the phone, so we still have a lot of phone service, but there are a lot of customers on our website on certain pages that we're completely missing right now.
Yeah.
Well, not missing so much anymore because we're working on several initiatives to get, both live and agentic support in every moment. So I'm very, very excited about it. I'm also very excited about the opportunity to have that personalized experience when a customer starts to as I said, most people don't think about what they need before they start shopping. And if we can help customers, whether they purchase from us right away or not, think about what they need to be asking in order to get the right comfort. It's important.
Yeah.
It's a big purchase. Even in a store where you're trying before you buy, you're only lying on that bed for a few minutes, not for a night.
Yeah.
So the questions that are second level, that aren't automatic, that don't come to mind automatically, are the ones that we want to seed with potential customers.
And how important do you think are visuals, videos, and to serve them at that right moment? And how important do you think is more like voice, let's say voice activated like calls, or like being able to give them a conversation like back and forth? Curious what your strategy is there. How do you kind of like see the future of like your website experience change, especially with these new technologies?
Yeah, I think it has to be both. We need both visual and, voice text engagement. We are working on a new website right now, so these questions are very top of mind.
Yeah.
It does depend a bit on the preference of the consumer. I think it's baseline that everyone should have some form of chat that answers a lot of questions. We know what our most frequently asked questions are, and we know that delivering quick responses on those increases our conversion rates and increases our service scores because we're responding in the moment.
Yeah.
But that second layer of visual description, and for people that don't want to engage yet, being able to see and understand prior to engagement or prior to purchase is very important. And if you leave a customer hanging that doesn't want to engage with a bot or with a live person and doesn't have enough information on hand to make a decision, is going to leave.
Yeah. There's also these new channels where, streaming platforms are expanding their offering.
Yeah.
They now have their own ad platform. The cost to serve ads there is much lower than, traditional broadcasting networks.
Yes.
How are you viewing that channel? Like, where do you think that's going to lead to?
I think it's wonderful that now there are better options with streaming. It's something on my list to explore, but I haven't done any exploration.
Okay.
It's probably a 26 initiative.
Got it. And how do you view competition? And what are times when maybe do you feel like threatened, or how do you usually evaluate when there's a new entrant or when there's like similar companies trying to steal your market share? What are channels and tools and framework do you use to sort of like keep tab on the market?
So to keep tabs on the market is I try to become a new customer every few months, or a new lead for a lot of the companies that we've tagged, because it's interesting to see what others are doing in the marketplace and what messages are fresh versus very much repurposed. It's also important to keep in mind that we don't always need fresh content, because somebody's in the market for a mattress until they purchase it, and then they're not thinking about you for many, many years. So I like to see just what the cycle is of our competitors. We are a very promotional industry. So most sales are happening during 6 promotional periods throughout the year. And that's incredibly frustrating, but something that we have to accept and work with. Where I find opportunity is in the off seasons. But I would say, just from a framework standpoint, what type of engagement are we seeing our competitors have on social platforms? What activations are they doing that are digital or in person? The dynamic between D2C, sleep brands and retail is very interesting, because there are several successful brands now that got their start entirely D2C and have moved much more towards retail. So that's something that we keep a very close eye on, just like what's working, what's not working in a digital versus brick and mortar world.
Yeah. And, I guess like during sale season, people are probably maybe bookmarking a certain mattress and then waiting for it to go on sale. Where do you place Meta's ads platform or TikTok as a channel to run some of these offers? And are there other channels, like maybe a brand like Reverie is looking at as a primary source to publicize these offers?
Yeah, I think there is no choice but to be serving ads on Meta. We actually don't do TikTok right now, again, because of our audience, but it's something that we are missing out on in the medium term. So definitely on the list of things to do as well. I would say with Meta and with search ads, it's very important, especially during promotions, because if somebody's tagged us, that's when they're going to search, and that's when we see spikes in traffic to our website.
Got it.
But I think, there's also value in YouTube. It's a visual product. When people start really going down the rabbit hole, and there are people who have all sorts of questions about materials and dimensions and breathability and all the things that they should be asking, when we're able to meet them kind of farther down the rabbit hole, with either YouTube content or traffic directed back to our website, blog posts, it's value add.
That makes a ton of sense. And I guess I'm curious to know a little bit more about where do you sort of stand here, where there's this big debate among consumer brands, like in-house content versus agencies, moving in the speed of consumer trends. How do you manage these operations? Where should stories be told, created, conceptualized? What's your take on it?
Oof.
I touched a nerve.
It's an ever-changing model. We used to do everything in-house. We basically had an in-house agency. And that's exciting because you have ownership of everything. And those were the days when we had time to think through an entire campaign, build it out, produce it, and execute. That's very hard to sustain because there's always turnover. There's not as much information coming in and feeding and fueling the changes you need to make in a rapidly changing world. So we've moved much more towards an outsourced, not necessarily agency environment. I mean, we do work with agencies, but also, third parties that have access to other brands. Because understanding what other brands are doing, especially other brands that are not in the industry, that's where we find innovative ideas and inspiration. And if you're working entirely in-house, it's harder to do. It's still really important that we get the brief really, really right. And it's also very important for me that I have 100% confidence with whoever we're working with that's external, that they also understand and buy into our brand and our brand values. That's where we've run into issues. If you're working, as a smaller organization, working with a large agency, for example, has sometimes been challenging for us because we're always going to be a sliver of their attention. So finding the right partners is something that over the years I've spent more time. I've gotten better at it, but also I spend more time up front making sure that fit is really, really good, that we're asking the right questions, and that we're setting the right expectations.
Got it. And, as D2C brands are scaling, there's a lot of questions on their mind. I'm curious because now you're a veteran, you've been in the industry for so long. What are some mistakes that you think you made, or maybe good learning moments that looking back, you could have done it differently? Maybe you can share a little bit of what that taught you about building a consumer brand.
Absolutely. So one definite learning is to take the time up front to really understand the organization. So I think a great model is a model I've seen in pharma and biotech, where marketers are expected to go out in the field and sell for up to 18 months and then come in and be marketers, because that way they fully understand the customer. That's a hard model to implement. There are a lot of training costs associated with that, especially for a startup or a small company. But if you can take the time, or if part of your job is to wear other hats and to be out there understanding what it's like to walk in somebody else's shoes, is really important. So whether that's, as a marketer, having a few hours a week where you have to listen to customer service calls or even respond to customer service emails, there is no better training ground than understanding the service side of the customer. Or shadowing the sales team or helping out with sales activities. Those two things I think are really, really valuable for a marketer.
Got it. I guess that's definitely interesting. I feel at least in tech, you're always asked to dog food and you have to definitely use your own product. But because I worked in big tech, there's always a separate marketing org. We always have these disagreements over marketers want to say something different, the product does something different.
Right.
So I feel it's interesting because you've brought everything under the same umbrella. So you're forced to think about what you say, because it has to tie back into what you sell.
Right.
That makes a ton of sense. What kind of I guess like I love to ask this to everybody, which is, what do you think the future of consumer marketing looks like in 2030?
In 2030.
Yeah, just 5 years from now.
That feels like a long time off, but it's not. I think the future of consumer marketing is going to be more robust because we're going to be able to leverage more AI tools, more agents. There's going to be the opportunity to touch customers even more with enhanced AI resources.
Yeah.
And to get more personal and granular with the needs of the individual customer. So I'm excited about it. I think there are going to be some major hiccups and learning curves for everybody. There are probably going to be some fantastic case studies to talk through.
Yeah.
Hopefully we won't be one of them. But I do think there is this world where, AI can really enhance consumer marketing to scale and to be more granular with the individual.
Yeah. And are there like brands today that you are inspired by the way in which they have adopted new technology, or like by way in which they have adopted storytelling formats that really resonate, and maybe not in your area, but you kind of like look at them and feel very inspired and supercharged to implement those at Reverie?
Yeah. So right now I'm really fascinated and disturbed by how my 9 and 11-year-old daughters are obsessed with cosmetics.
Oh.
So, like Sephora is where they want to go. They want to go to Sephora. They want to go to Ulta. They don't have social media accounts. They don't have phones, but they still figure out, they know so much about all of these products that are targeted towards tweens at these retailers.
Yeah.
And I'm just fascinated by how this happens and how my daughters are learning about these products and really buying into the brand stories and really, identifying with these brands in ways that I certainly didn't at the same age, because I didn't have the access that they have, nor was information being directed at me in the same way that it is.
Do they use Roblox?
They do use Roblox.
I think Roblox is a great channel to reach them, because
Yes.
my baby cousins, all Gen Z, they're so into Roblox, and I think you can even buy digital goods on Roblox. They save money and they buy Gucci, Prada bags, all in Roblox universe. So I feel like that's a big channel people are not even thinking about probably.
Yes, I think you're right.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's fascinating to me. It's also something that as a parent, I want to make sure I understand. And as a marketer, I also want to understand from, two different sides of the coin.
Yeah. And one last question. What are you currently reading?
Ooh. So I am a big audiobook listener because that's how I get all of my stuff in. I'm reading a book. I can't remember the name of the book, but the author is Lisa Tan. So she is a clinical psychologist, and she writes about helping teens navigate from tweenhood to teenhood. So predictable, relevant to my life right now. But I'm reading that. I just started a book this weekend about the history of Asian Americans in the U.S. So it's focusing on how there was an influx of Chinese immigrants during the gold rush to California, and how that's translated over the centuries.
Yeah.
Into America. And I'm very fascinated by historical fiction and history. So I like to read about what's going on and think about how it's impacting society today, which is, a very complicated story.
Yeah. And you also said you really are into longevity and
Yes.
those things. So curious if you have tried any of the protocols that are there. It's definitely very big in Silicon Valley, and I'm
Yes.
also kind of into it. So I'm curious what you're doing today.
So I try to be 80-20 because it's easy to go extreme. So one thing that I stay on the other side of is I have an Oura ring that I wear off and on, but I actually don't like to track my sleep all the time because I get in my head about it. So I know if I wake up in the morning and I've slept well, and I don't need my app to tell me that I only have an 80%, right? So that's where I'm constantly fighting with that. But very into thinking about daily habits and daily consistency, try to get my muscle building, my weightlifting in, 2 to 3 times a week, walking with a weighted vest, protein very, very focused on protein in the morning, and, taking supplements that are going to help my current phase of life and, extend brain power and strength and stability over time.
Are
But I would
there?
say-
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. The other thing that I'm hoping to get more into is doing a sauna every day.
I was just gonna ask that. That's the latest thing here, where founders go to the sauna, and that's where you meet like other founders. So I was gonna ask, you do sauna and cold plunge.
Yes, I mean, I have done cold plunge for years. In fact, my husband has been cold plunging for at least 15 years.
He's like the early adopter.
Yeah. And I go in and out. I try to just turn the shower on and sit there in the cold for a minute. But yeah, I mean, I do think there's a lot of value in sort of shocking and rebooting the system, and in, developing some grit through the process as well.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure. I learned so much, and it's also interesting because not so many brands have like the kind of like channel penetration that a brand like Reverie has, and every D2C brand I meet, like they start online, but their goal is to like penetrate into retail stores. So there's a lot of learning, and I would love to like see you a year from now to just to understand like, hey, how did those AI efforts go? Like just to gather all the learnings. But it was such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Priya. I enjoyed it a lot.